Caving into the inflation pressure, Biden administration opens up federal land for oil drilling.
What is Elon Musk up to with his uninvited offer to buy Twitter?
Retired U.S. Air Force officer, Lieutenant Colonel, tells us what is the worst scenario should CCP invade Taiwan.
The most prosperous city of China turns into hell in an unbelievable twist.
Welcome to Wei and Kathy Show. I'm your host, Wei Fang.
I'm Kathy Zhang.
Well, first, let's talk about the last piece of news that we want to bring to you, which is what's happening in Shanghai. As you just heard from Kathy, it's just in an unbelievable twist. The most glamorous or prosperous or proudest city, or however you call it, Shanghai. It's called the pearl of the Orient, right?
Yeah. The Paris of Orient.
The Paris of the Orient, the pearl of the Orient, the city of Shanghai, where Kathy and Wei came from. All right, so both of us attended the best school over there before we came to the U.S. Just the entire city are starving. They cannot find enough food to eat. And some of them, some old people, cannot bear with the suffering of the hunger. They jump out of the window, jump to their death. In the modern day 21st century China, there's no war, there's no famine, there's no disaster, there's no natural disaster, there's no storm, no hurricane, and no earthquake.
And worse yet, what the government is doing over there to its citizens who are not infected. We're going to bring an update to you and also share a story of a Ukrainian in Shanghai, what she wants to do, and her most urgent needs, she said, is going back to Ukraine, the war zone.
Yep, simply unbelievable. Okay, so stay with us until the end, and we'll bring you that story. Okay, so before that, let's bring you several pieces of important development, in this country. The first has to do with our own administration. Okay, it's actually, to many of you, you will read this as a piece of good news. The Department of Interior announced today that it will resume the sale of oil and gas leases on federal land beginning next week.
The Bureau of Land Management will begin issuing final environmental assessments and the sale notices on next Monday for future oil and gas projects, and will offer to lease approximately 173 parcels on roughly 144,000 acres, which is an 80% reduction from the acreage originally nominated.
And the move came as President Biden faced gasoline price hikes. You all know that, and the soaring inflation, and each of which could prove politically catastrophic. We are only 7 months away, less than 7 months away from the midterm election. And Biden has said that during the campaign that he wanted to end such leases and put a moratorium on them the first day of his presidency.
The department stated that the Bureau of Land Management assessed the potentially available and eligible acreage in the state of Alabama, Colorado, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Utah, and Wyoming.
And if you recall that within the first week of in office, actually in the first day of his in office, Biden signed an executive order to suspend the license for the Keystone pipeline. And then in his first week, he signed another executive order to temporarily suspend the new oil and gas leases on the public lands and offshore waters for drilling and fracking. So Kathy, what do you think?
Well, I can share what the interviews from some of our guests are talking about. Is this are they truly concerning about the oil price, or it's really just for the midterm election, for the political purpose? I think people can judge by themselves.
Yeah, so basically, actually, as you know, that there's this war going on, right, in Europe, and then European Union are really faced a terribly shortage of the energy, okay, because they got the 40% of the natural gas from Russia. 25% of their oil from also Russia. And then now with the war going on, they have not stopped buying, okay, but they reduced the purchase. And then now Europe is just really facing just between a hard place and a wall. And then what to do? Okay, it seems that they really have no way out. Today, Germany is still buying enough gas and oil from Russia, literally providing Russia with $10 billion euros every month. You can imagine that money most likely went to the war. And then so this is this situation. And so Biden is also between a rock and hard place. And now it seems that Biden cannot hold that off anymore. So after just selling out unleashing the emergency reserve oil and try to stabilize the oil market, and that's not enough. That simply is not enough. Only 500,000 barrels a day, and this country is probably short of 2 or 3 million barrels a day. So now Biden has reopened up the federal land, which is good news for the oil companies. However, the Keystone pipeline is not still suspended. That one is not working, and that's quite a significant project, which could provide nearly 1 million barrels a day. And actually, let me just extend that a little bit. So does Europe has a solution? It does. Just think about that. I don't know whether you agree or not, but in my opinion, in Germany, they got 17 nuclear power plant. 3 of them are working right now, providing 12% of the electricity in Germany. So think about that. If they turn on all the 17 nuclear power plant, it would be, they can produce, that alone produces 70% of the entire electricity used in Germany. But they don't do that, right? Because nuclear is not clean and is threatening. So they want to buy natural gas and oil from Russia. And it seems like the oil and the gas from Russia is not. It's very clean. It does not pollute or warm up the earth. And then with the 10 billion euros supplied to Putin, who could use that to sustain his war, including firing the nuclear weapons. So, if you follow the logic, okay, it's Germany rather want to embrace the prospect of being hit, the attack of the nuclear weapon, rather than turn on the nuclear power plant. So it's quite ridiculous. But anyway, with this, this is a good first step. Otherwise, as the gas stations, the oil, the price keep pumping up, that's gonna bring the political disaster, right, to the midterm election, to President Biden and his party. So that's that. And let's see whether Germany would learn the same thing too. They also have solutions. It's not they are between a rock and hard place. They are not. The gas solution, they're just not willing to turn it on. And that's where we are. Do you agree? Okay, what I just described. If you don't agree, or if you have your own point of view, and just share that, because we do want to hear from you. So, okay, that's the first thing. All right, and the second thing that we want to talk about is the Elon Musk bidding war. His effort to buy Twitter. All right, let's just retro a little bit. On Monday, we talked about a little bit ahead of Fox News, as some of you pointed out to us. And Sunday night, I was driving back to Bay Area from Los Angeles. Okay, on my phone, I saw this tweet popping up, saying that the Twitter CEO said Elon Musk decided not to join our company's board. And then Wall Street Journal published a report which has 3 lines because it's too breaking. It's too big a piece of news. All right, so on the second day, which is Monday, nothing happened. On the Tuesday, something happened. What is it? Elon Musk filed his Schedule 12D to register his purchase of his 5.2% of the Twitter stocks, a total of 74 million shares. And actually, he did that already, okay? Days ago, he already filed a Schedule 12G. 12G is just a simplistic form indicating he's a passive investor, okay, just want to make some money or say something on the board, does not indicate that any intention to acquire the company. 12D is such a form because he has to indicate clearly his intention so that the targeted company have that visibility, have that transparency. So he used that form, and then in the status in that field, he filled in active investor. In the language of the SEC, active investor means he want to purchase it. And so that's quite alarming. In the meantime, believe it or not, Elon Musk did not write any tweet for 3 days. And so what's the big deal of that? Wei doesn't, that oftentimes I don't tweet for 3 days, and Kathy probably never tweeted. To Elon Musk, no. Elon Musk tweeted 15 to 30 times every single day recently. Okay, he just live on Twitters, sort of like President Trump back then, if you recall. And so altogether, in his 11 years of using Twitter, using Twitter, he has tweeted 17,200 tweets. That's how much he does, and how much he loves this company. So remember that, okay? With that as the background, with that as a habit, how interested he would be in this company. All right. So on Thursday morning, okay, the news came out. Actually, he wrote a letter on the Wednesday to the chairman of the Twitter's board, and let me just read you. It's just very short letter. Okay, but very, very powerful. And then, okay, first he said this is his purpose. Okay, he said I invested in Twitter as I believe it's in its potential to be the platform for free speech around the globe. And I believe free speech is a societal imperative for a functioning democracy. All right, so what do you think of this statement? Most people probably just skip it. Okay, that's just whatever, opening sentence. But I do think that's his true intention. That's the entire motivation behind this uninvited offer, okay? And the second one is really, I would say, would scare the heck out of the chairman of the board. He said, however, since making my investment, I now realize the company will neither strive nor serve this societal imperative in its current form. Twitter needs to be transformed as a public company. So what does that mean? It means the board, please leave. I don't need you. I can run the company. I'm going to take it private, and I'm going to just change it big way. All right, so the next has to do with that if you don't sell it to me, I'm going to sell my stake in Twitter. So what does that mean? That means that it's basically a threat, right? It's a threat. So that created an effect of even he offered $50.20 on Thursday, $54.20 for one share, and the stock did not come up because people are scared. What if they don't take it? They don't take the offer, and Elon Musk turn around and sell his stock. The price will drop down to the 30s because that's where the stock was. The stock price was when Elon Musk announced that he got 74 million Twitter stocks, which then triggered the stock price to jump more than 20% to its current level in the 40s, in the 50 and 40s. All right, so people are scared. People don't know what will happen. So that's Thursday. All right, and then what happened today? What happened today is Twitter board came up with a poison pill, which is the formal name is called the Shareholders' Rights Plan. Okay, pretty much is saying that if somebody wants to take us uninvited, hostile takeover, we're gonna let the current shareholder, each of them would buy the new Twitter share at a deep discount. All right, basically they just print new stocks out of thin air, and then sell it at a fraction of this market price. So that, needless to say, that would dilute each share, right? And everybody can do that. Everybody can exercise that right, and buy this new, printed share with a deeply discounted price, with one exception. The takeover guy cannot do that. Okay, that's what they just put in the bylaw today. So Elon Musk doesn't get to do it. So his hold, I'm sorry, his 74 million Twitter shares would be diluted immediately. So he has to buy more in order to get to the stake enough for him to take over the company. So that's called the poison pill. And it said, now would Elon Musk just walk away? What do you think? I really wanted to know that. What do you think? Would he just just like that and walk away? And or he's gonna do something here. Actually, during an interview with the founder of the Tech Talk in Vancouver, that was a pre-scheduled meeting, and then of course the interviewer was quite interested in his position behind this purchase of the Twitter, and Elon Musk said, "Well, I got a plan B." And then the Twitter founder said, the TED founder said, "So what is it? We want to hear about that." He said, "Another time." So now we don't know. We don't know what he will do. And the Twitter's board has not responded. They passed this poison bill resolution, but they have not responded. But everybody know that they will reject this. Okay, they will for sure reject it. Then what would Elon Musk do? Okay, that's really the question. So Elon Musk could, exercise his, throw out something called a tender offer to all shareholders. He could go beyond the board and go to all the shareholders, saying that, this is my offer, could be like $60, all right? If I can buy enough, to control the company, I will just pay that money. If I don't got enough commitment from the current shareholders, it's just like nothing happened, all right? So that's called a tender offer. And he could do that. But as he do that, the poison pill will also kick in and will just upping his expense. So what would he do? Okay, and how much money would he be willing to commit to this purchase? That's the question that we need to see over the weekend or during next week. All right. But before we do that, before we leave this topic, I do want to share with you two observations that I have about Elon Musk. First, he clearly realized how important Twitter is. Twitter only have 220 million active users per quarter. Okay, and then how many users does Facebook have? 2.9 billion people. All right. So YouTube has 2.3 billion people, and then even TikTok, the latecomer, they got 1 billion users. But Twitter only have 220 million active users. But most opinion leader, most illuminators, or most VIPs, they are on Twitter. They tweet every day. Okay, the content is more like a news-like type of content. So people who stay on Twitter, and 70% of them are men. So, or in other way, news-loving people, news reader. And then 23% of the adult in this country, United States of America, are Twitter users. So Twitter has a unproportional influence in this country, in the public discourse, because it's largely, just think about that, all those opinion leaders, they tweet. What they tweet is either news or their opinion. And only if what they tweet is highly valuable could they build up followers. And this is exactly what has been happening to Twitter in the last 12 years. Okay, so this is so Elon Musk said Twitter is today's town square. Okay, he's fully aware that Twitter can impact a leading group of people in this country, the active people who read news every day and influence people around them. And that what is Twitter. So that's why he's interested in it. The second point observation I want to share with you is, remember I already said, he tweeted 17,000 times in the last 11 years. So way more than average Twitter users, or even Twitter as influencer there. So he really loved the platform. He wanted people are asking that why don't Elon Musk just go off and invent his own Twitter company, create his own Twitter company? I would say because he loved this company. Okay, he lived and breathed on it for more than 10 years. So let's see. So we got the number one, the most wealthiest person and the most talented person, Elon Musk there, and he's looking at this Twitter, which which is how to say 1/7 of his net worth. Okay, with this poison pill standing ahead of in front of him, how much effort would he take to overcome the difficulty, the challenge, the barrier to really own Twitter?
Yeah, he kind of indicated I have a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
I, could.
And he said economics is not a problem. That's what he said. Economics is not a problem. Okay, he care about this functioning democracy. And personally, in my Chinese show, I share with the people, I said, if he were to get the Twitter, I think he would reactivate the President Trump's Twitter account. I do think so. I don't have certainty. I don't know him. I didn't talk to him, but according to basically what he said, and over the time, that's the conclusion I draw. We'll see. We'll see. So what do you think? What do you think? Do you think he would move beyond this poison pill and pay a lot of a much higher price to get this company, or he would just walk away? Just type up your how to say your opinion and the reason of it, and we want to know about that. Okay.
Yeah, and the one thing he said at the TED talk,
Yeah.
he said is the real something like the real freedom of speech is you can allow someone that you don't like to say something that you don't like. That's the real freedom of speech. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let's see. Louis, you wrote, I'm betting the woke board ignore their shareholders and the stock price dumped. The stock price dumped, and I was shorted all the way down then by DWAC, the Trump company, okay, hoping that they could, they come in, scoop them up for pennies on the dollar. Okay, NFA device. All right. We'll see. That's definitely one how to say one possible scenario.
Yeah. Oh, wanted to take the opportunity to thank Larry for your support, for your donation, Larry.
Okay. And Jim, you wrote Novak. You wrote Twitter will be more profitable without censorship. I think Musk sees a way to make money. He will stick to his takeover plan. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. And Hotris Tad, I'm sorry, is it hot retarded chicks? You wrote that Twitter is the enemy of the United States. Yeah, I understand for now, but I think Elon Musk is trying to change that. Okay. All right, so with that, we will just stop here. We'll move on to the next topic, which has to do with the guest that we showed you the night before, which is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, Lieutenant Colonel Gilmont Larari. So in the last episode, at the end of the interview, he was talking about, one thing he's really worried about is that because of the geographic position of Taiwan, he's worried that once, in case the invasion by the CCP started, in Taiwan, there's no way for any outside, parties to just try to send any kind of weapon support to Taiwan, also for the Taiwanese to escape from the island. So he believes that at this time, the United States and other countries in the West should give more weapons like anti-ship, anti-air, anti-missile weapons to Taiwan. So then I, wanted to ask him about whether the Taiwanese government, they are aware of this issue and what are they doing about it. Also, since Lieutenant Colonel Larari has been living in Taiwan for over a month now, I wanted him to share what is he seeing in Taiwan in the light of the Ukraine and Russian war. So he also analyzed a lot about the threat of CCP, whether the sleeping giant, which meaning the United States and the West, has really realized it is indeed the top threat to the free world, comparing to Russia. So without further delay, let's go for the second part of my interview. the Taiwan government, would they do anything to address the problem that you saw? That they really need to beef up the weapons, anti-ship, anti-air missiles,
Yes.
things like that.
I think they are aware, and I think they're doing some things. For example, the current requirement for service in the military in Taiwan is 4 months. And the current administration is talking about increasing it to 10 months or to a year. So doubling it or tripling it because of this increased concern. Taiwan also has its own capabilities to build its own weapon systems. They have their own anti-air system. They have their own anti-ship system. They have their own anti-missile system. Not because they're very clever at doing things, but because they're forced to build their own system because no one would be willing to give them systems or allow them to buy systems. This occurred, for example, with the submarines. There was a lot of pressure put on by the CCP to prevent Taiwan from getting any kind of submarine system. So consequently, that forced the Taiwanese government to spend money to build from scratch, to build their own submarine system. In the next couple of years, they're going to have an additional 6 submarines, for example. So the Taiwanese government is put in a hard situation where they are forced to fend for themselves, which is, in some sense, it's a good thing, but also it might not be sufficient because of the size and force that the PLA could bring against Taiwan. So that's why it's important for the rest of the world to provide support as they can, just as they have with Ukraine. And that's why I think it's very important to tie Ukraine and Taiwan very tightly together, because this is the strongest argument to help Taiwan. And this is exactly what the propaganda people in the CCP are trying to stop, because they don't want the rest of the world to feel sympathy towards Taiwan. They want people to think that Taiwan is a what they call a rogue province, and it's an internal affair. But the more that people connect between Ukraine and Taiwan, the better it is for Taiwan, and it's better for the rest of the world to show sympathy and to actually provide help that is useful to Taiwan.
So, Guillermo, since you arrived and lived in Taiwan for 1 month now, and that's during the Ukraine war, how do you see the atmosphere in Taiwan in regards to how they view this war, and also relates to how Taiwan could be potentially attacked by CCP?
So I'll answer it in 2 different ways. I'll answer it from the point of view of discussions I've had with people on the street, or just people I've been interviewing for my research, and then also the polling that's been going on in Taiwan. So based on just my interactions with people here in Taiwan, it has increased their awareness of the threat of the CCP. And I think it's a good thing. Unfortunately, it's not a good thing for Ukraine, but for the Taiwanese people to become more concerned is a good thing, and to take it more seriously is a good thing. What happened to Hong Kong was also traumatic for the Taiwanese people. Many of them have relatives there, and they have done business with people in Hong Kong. And so, in the same sense, Ukraine was another reminder of the fact that when you have aggressive, autocratic superpowers with small neighbors, or neighbors that don't have nuclear weapons, you become vulnerable. And so the people in Taiwan have become more energized. And I think the political environment is more likely to support a more aggressive pursuit of preparedness. And I think not only military side, but I think the resilience of society is important. And so it's not just weapons. It's also about the people's minds and how they support the idea of resisting an invasion, and how they have practical means to deal with this. And I think the resilience factor it has become stronger, and in a positive way. Now, in terms of polling, yes, I think that what I've read is that the polls have indicated that the Taiwanese people have become more and more concern about an invasion, but not to the point where they're fearful. But I think increased amount to the point where they understand that it's serious and that they need to plan and deal with this. So, in the psychology part of it, I think they've come to understand that it is serious and they need to prepare. I think enough people in Taiwan are dedicated enough to resist invasion. I think the polling said that 70% of the people in Taiwan would be willing to fight against the PLA should they invade. And this number is a dramatic increase from prior to the Ukrainian-Russian war. These are all good things. And I think that Taiwan should take advantage of this sense of urgency and push their people to increase their readiness, preparedness, and also ask their allies and friends to help them where they need help.
A while ago, it was said Russia has been downgraded to a secondary threat, right? The top threat is the CCP. How do you think United States right now treating the threat of the CCP? Is it enough? They realize enough it's the biggest threat, or is there any concerns do you have?
Let me break it up into several different dimensions. In terms of the nuclear weapons threat, Russia currently has more nuclear weapons than China does. And so in terms of a nuclear war, Russia is a greater threat. But China, the PLA specifically, is building a huge amount of missile launch sites, mainly in the center north and center western part of China. And so those missile fields, estimated right now, currently, to be 300 missile silos, each with a potential of 3 nuclear warheads on each one. Once those are built and they're operational, that would mean that the PRC would be almost an equivalent threat in terms of ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile threat to the United States. So they're building to that threat on the nuclear side. But on the economy side, the PRC is leaps and bounds ahead of Russia. They are number 2 in terms of the economy, and they're probably going to be number 1 eventually, just due to their size, population, and their industry, and what they've stolen from the West in terms of intellectual property. The problem is that in my opinion, is that the CCP has done actions to sort of just below the level of conflict. They've pushed in the South China Sea. They've pushed through their Belt and Road Initiative. They've pushed different initiatives around the world, Latin America, Africa, Asia, everywhere, Europe. And so they are expanding at an incredible amount compared to, let's say, Russia is pretty stagnant. So the problem is that the U.S. and the West are asleep. They don't see the threat as serious as it is. And that's the problem, is that the CCP is smart in terms of not waking up the giant that the West can be. And so I think that's why the PRC, specifically the Chinese Communist Party, is a much graver threat, because they're, I guess a good word would be they're sneaky. They're able to do things that do not provoke us in a big way, but they're constantly pushing and pushing and pushing everywhere. And so the U.S. and the West and the other allies, Japan, Australia, India, are not forced to make a sudden move. They're lulled into sort of this economic business, trade. But the CCP will conduct military operations eventually. They have to, because they're building such a large military. In fact, for example, the PLA Navy is larger today than the U.S. and it's going to be larger next year as even the U.S. is drawing down the number of ships that we're producing and the number of the ships that are retiring. Our numbers are going to continue to go down. In the military sense, we're weaker. In the economic sense, they're catching up. And I think that they have a strategy that will keep us just below reacting to their behavior. Now, of course, the invasion of Taiwan would be an activity that would activate us. But the question is what would they do? I mean, one of my scenarios that I've thought about strongly is the PLA could just conduct a blockade around Taiwan and declare that anyone who interfered with it would be an act of war and that they would respond accordingly. In other words, threaten nuclear war. And just as Russia has threatened the same thing about Ukraine. And so if they conduct a blockade against Taiwan, I'm not so sure what the West will do, because there's nobody being killed. There's no media that shows people dying, as in Ukraine. But in effect, it puts a lot of pressure on the Taiwanese people to survive without any kind of outside help. And so this is something that I think, in terms of if they wanted to do a slow type of aggression, this would be an option for them. And I think that would be problematic for the rest of the world to deal with. So there are a lot of things that I'm concerned about with the PRC, and I think as long as we are asleep and not having let's say a strategic plan to deal with them, I think they're going to continue to be an increasing threat, and hopefully we'll be able to deal with them before they become a threat that we can't deal with anymore.
Janet Yellen was talking about if CCP does invade Taiwan, for sure, United States gonna just use all kinds of sanction against Chinese government. How do you think this type of a reaction, would that be sufficient enough to curb the CCP?
I heard a speaker a couple of days ago mention what they thought was the vital interests of the CCP. Number one is internal stability. Number two is their borders, the secure borders. And number three is the economy. So secure borders falls into the Taiwan framework. It's more important to them than the economy. Again, according to this list that this panel was talking about. And so I would argue that that any kind of economic boycott of the PRC would be painful, not only for the PRC, but for the rest of the world, because the rest of the world does depend on a lot of production coming out of the PRC. But as we saw in the case of Russia, that didn't stop Putin from continuing his war against Ukraine. I don't know of any example in history where boycotts have been successful in terms of preventing the leadership of the country from pursuing war if they wanted to do it. Even though it might not make economic sense, people forget that the economy is not necessarily the only thing that people think about. So, as I mentioned, in the case of the PRC, CCP believes that their borders are more important, secure borders are more important, and they believe that Taiwan is a part of their borders, and they don't have an issue, in my opinion. Now, remember that Xi Jinping also has directed his people to develop what they call a dual circulation concept within China. In other words, make China more independent of the exterior economy. Now, obviously, they're not there yet, and they won't be there for a long time, but they're moving in that direction. Russia was also moving in that direction immediately following the 2014 war, where the West also conducted some sanctions against Russia. But that, again, didn't stop them from doing a second invasion of Ukraine. So I don't think that sanctions will stop the CCP from taking Taiwan.
Yeah, I came from China. I know the political goal is more important for them than people's life, how they live in China.
Yes, I mean, and I'm sure you understand this more than I do, is that in the United States, the people are the sovereign. They are in charge of the government. They can change the government. They have the ability to do that. And we have freedom of thought, freedom of speech. In China, the people serve the Communist Party, and everything supports the Communist Party. The PLA serves the Communist Party. The United States, the military serves the Constitution, and serves the people. But in Communist China, the PLA serves the party. And the party is ultimately in charge and makes all decisions. There's no freedom of speech. There's no freedom of religion. There's no freedom whatsoever. And so it's everything reversed. I'm sure that you and many others have seen this close hand. And it's very important for people to understand that when the CCP decides to do something against Taiwan, it's not merely an invasion, it's also oppression of another group of people that are currently democratic, living in freedom, able to vote, and able to think whatever they want to think. Once the CCP takes over, as we saw in Hong Kong, and as we've seen in Tibet and every other place that they've taken over regions from the people who live there, that this is the way that they operate. The CCP is the religion of the PRC.
Very well said. Anything else you would like to share with our audience?
One important thing to understand is that democracy is a threat to the CCP. The freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the freedom to be equal under the law, be able to appeal decisions, all these things that we take for granted in Western democracies is poison to the CCP. And I think one of the reasons, maybe the biggest reason, besides the fact that that Taiwan is close to China and has this Chinese-speaking population, I think a major issue that really attacks the CCP is the freedom that people here in Taiwan have. And I think used effectively, it could attack the internal stability of the PRC. As we saw in Tiananmen Square in 1989, where over 10,000 people were killed. Freedom is something that the CCP fears. And I think this is one of the reasons why, maybe the major reason why they want to take over Taiwan. And I think it's something that, as a tool, that maybe this is one area that we should be emphasizing a lot more to affect the people that live under the rule of the CCP.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gurman, again for coming on to our show and sharing your insights of those issues.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so I think actually it's a good segue to talk about Shanghai right now. As people in Shanghai, somebody feel that they are looks like being treated as Uyghurs or the people in the street of Hong Kong. And why? Because right now, almost 1 month with this COVID zero policy and zero COVID policy, and people in Shanghai, one real problem is about the food. But now another scenario came up, which is the Shanghai government. They are actually forcibly expropriating people's apartments as isolation hospitals. and they suppress those people if they don't obey in Shanghai now. Look at that. Take a look at this video.
Yeah, so basically, they're removing people from their living places because the places has been now designating as the quarantine hospital.
Yeah, let's have some audio.
And people was kneeling down and just plea with the police. The white clothes people, they are police.
Look at people. They kneel down. They beg, say, "Please, let our family members go," because they are arresting, beating up those family members.
And then those police, they're army, the PLA members. And the Chinese government moved them from the so-called the Western district, Western military district, which is about 600 miles away, because they would have no attachment to dealing with Shanghai people forcefully.
Yeah, it's similar to what happened on the Tiananmen Square.
Right. They dare not to move
1989 Tiananmen massacre, where the POA, they moved into Beijing to suppress those students are from outside of the city of Beijing.
Remote military district.
Yeah, they are shouting, people shouting, the females are shouting, "Please send back my family members." And they are also shouting, "You are beating up older people and you don't arrest bad people. Why you arrest good people?" That's what they are shouting about.
Okay. So just before the show, I saw a video which is a old lady probably in her 70s. She jumped out of window because of hunger. Okay, and his husband then ran down to the downstairs to outside where the body of his wife just is laying, and then was just screaming out there.
Yeah, and people because they are so hungry, no food, people trying all kinds of things, trying to get food. One man actually called the police and saying that the so-called anti-pandemic people, and saying that asking, if I just break out of the blockade and you arrest me, would I get food then?
Yeah, but I mean, so throw me into jail.
Yeah.
Is there food in jail? If so, he's gonna just
a break out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's also see some other people in Shanghai. One group of people are the truckers. Okay, there are also a lot of truckers coming in and out of Shanghai, so they are stuck at highway intersections, and there are people who are on the white clothes again. Those are the people who will test those truck drivers. Once they are tested as positive, then you can say they will put a seal on the door of this truck, which means in the next day and the nights of either they are driving or they just staying at the intersection, the driver will take care of eating, drinking, and everything, okay, in the truck. So one truck driver just was so desperate and helpless, saying, "Please, can you please give me 2 big plastic bags? I'm afraid that I cannot hold for a long time." All right, and let's also see another group of people in Shanghai. Those are the migrant workers in Shanghai. There are thousands of migrant workers who were trapped in Shanghai construction sites. Because of the surge of the positive cases in Shanghai, the demand for isolation wards are soaring. So they just called in a lot of migrant workers outside of Shanghai to build up those isolation hospitals very quickly. So a lot of times those workers had to work 16 to 18 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day. But once they finished building those hospitals, what happened to them? They are trapped. They cannot go back to their hometown because the local government saying, if you are coming back, you might bring the virus from Shanghai. So no, we don't want you. And then Shanghai government saying, go back to your hometown. So they are being kicked back and forth. A group of 40 migrant workers from Zhejiang province and to Shanghai to support the construction, and worked for 5 days, overloaded every day, but finally they just have nowhere to go. And they are saying, Shanghai, let us go to the highway to find the next intersection. Then the Zhejiang province government and asking them to go back where they came from, which is Shanghai. So kick them back and forth. So that's the migrant workers in Shanghai situation right now. Let's then talk about, take a look at another story. It's about a Ukrainian in Shanghai. Her name is Jane Polubotko. She has been in Shanghai for 8 years, and she has been quarantined in this renovated Shanghai hospital in the exhibition center. It's a big exhibition center, and but she said she would rather go back to Ukraine, the war zone where her hometown is, right, and then living in this exhibition center. So that's a PBS story. Talked to her, and she said that she's been living with 4,000 people communally in this, and she was assigned a cell. It's called her number is 138. We can take a look at she took some footage of the cell. They can only have some place to wash face. There's no shower, so she hasn't been showering for 18 days. The thing is, and also the lights. She said the lights were on for 24 hours a day. And she already had the last 3 tests has been all negative, but she's still not allowed to get out. And she said, I don't understand. A lot of people like her just feel that we are not harmful to the society. Why you force us to stay here? And she said that the most thing she wants to do right now is only wants to get out of here. Let's take a listen. Oh, I think we had some difficulty pull up the video, but she just said, I just wanted to go back to Ukraine, although it's a war zone.
Yeah, and those are the people actually in the quarantine ward. And then talking about just 26 million people Shanghai needs. How do they get by every day? You have to eat, right? And where do they get the food? Just mind you this. Since the breakout in January of 2020, okay, the first breakout of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government has given nothing, okay, no check out to any Chinese in this more than 2 years. And while here, we the government issued checks. I think we gave too much. Okay, over there is the other extreme. Mm-hmm. Nothing was given. So for these 26 million people, they have to go to online to order food. Just imagine that this kind of supply situation where the supply route has all been segregated or separated or disconnected. In a very well-off family, okay, they pay $400 for 1 day's food. The price jumped up by 10 times. Who can afford those? But they all have to spend their money to just get by every day. Very, very simple, vegetable, basic food. They pay like 2,400人民币, $400 for 1 day's meal. And this government just let them just try to survive yourself. Okay, you guys all stay in the room. However you can you survive, die. Nothing has to do with me.
Yeah,
this is what they're left with.
Yeah, that's actually reminds of people what Mao Zedong did during the Great Leap, right? The Great Leap. Mm-hmm. They had the zero policy on the 麻雀, the birds. Squirrels. And because they said, the squirrels are harmful to the agriculture. So that's actually eventually, let me see, how many squirrels they killed? Nearly 2 billion sparrows were killed.
Sparrows, yeah.
Yeah, just in a few months. And then the near extinction of the sparrows allowed the insects to proliferate and wreak, havoc on the crops, which essentially killed the tens of millions of Chinese people by starvation over the following 3 years. So that's the Mao's era of the zero sparrow policy. And now it comes to the zero COVID policy.
And here, the Kitty Hawk, you said, why do they detain them like that? They detain them because they're tested positive.
Yeah. Also,
Some of them, they don't even test positive, but the CDC, the Chinese version of CDC, they just say, we think you are positive. So they move them away into those quarantine so-called hospitals. It's not really a hospital. It's like a concentration camp or concentration hall, however you call it.
yeah.
Concentration warehouse.
Yeah, and so actually, just last Sunday, I was in Los Angeles, covered the Defeat Mandate rally, and interviewed Dr. Robert Malone. He talked about, he explained why the situation in Shanghai, in China, is so bad with their zero COVID policy. Let's take a listen.
To my eyes, what's happened in China is that there has been a very, very, very rigorous effort to keep the virus out of the population, although they were quite glad to spread it, as you'll recall, in early 2020, when they did not restrict foreign travel prior to the Chinese New Year. And I've heard various stories about that. But the problem with infectious disease outbreaks like this is you cannot stop them. They're like water from the sky. They're like the wind blowing. You can't stop them. All you can do is delay the onset of the outbreak. And if you continue to delay it in the way that they have, then you set up a situation where suddenly, once it's in the population, you have a catastrophic wave.
Wow, it's a little hard to listen, but I hope that you got that.
Yeah, basically, he said, they are just, with this kind of restriction, only delay the outbreak. But this virus is just like the rain, just like the wind. You cannot stop it. But one thing I think Dr. Malone pointed out is he's just so good talking about essentially why the Chinese Communist government does that. Okay, so let's try again for the next clip.
And that appears to be what's happened here, is the belief, this fundamental belief that somehow the actions of man can resist something as fundamentally powerful as a highly infectious virus. What the Chinese have done in what happened in South Korea was that they delayed the vaccination, they delayed the infection in particular, as the virus became more and more resistant to vaccines. And then once it finally broke through, that highly evolved virus just ripped through the population. And that's exactly what anyone would predict that has knowledge of infectious disease outbreaks. This is like the dam is breaking, you cannot stop the water. And we're seeing it play out. We saw it play out in South Korea with that huge spike, and now we're seeing it play out in the People's Republic and the various satellite, I don't want to call them nation states, the various satellite cities that are affiliated with the People's Republic of China now.
So I think he really grabs the one thing that the logic of the CCP is they believe that manpower will win over God. Basically, what's
nature or heaven.
Nature, yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically what they have been doing, right? Since the Cultural Revolution, all those things. They just, because they are atheists. So that's a very essential reason why they are doing this. And of course, they just control everything. It's a totalitarian regime. They control everything. That's why they feel they can just arrest people if they don't follow their policy.
Yeah, so that's the sad thing that's happening in China, and believe it or not, this is Shanghai. Just imagine in New York City, okay, in New York City, people, the entire city is starving every day. and they have no reliability of food supply. They try to get by every day. They are stuck, and the entire reasoning is this: they want to freeze the entire Shanghai so that they can starve to death the virus. Ended up they starved to death so many people. Well, as of now, the official statistics about people die from this Omicron, virus in Shanghai is how many? 0. And that number is not accurate, but
but there are other,
it
deaths.
could be low.
Yeah,
because-
deaths from other, like for the suicides and the other diseases because of the zero policy. They cannot get cured. Be treated in time.
Right. So this is happening in real time. I don't know how much English media is reporting that, and this is just unbelievable. And the Jim you wrote, okay, Jim Novak, you said, how can the CCP survive this horrible public relation? Good question, good comment, okay. They cannot, because this is people are all waking up. They become outrageous. They couldn't possibly believe what kind of government is this. So a lot of their fantasy with the CCP, just realize the China dream become
Revive.
Yeah, jubilation of the China. That was the party's fantasy for them. They bought it in. They bought them all in, and then now they are waking up. Many people are waking up. So believe it or not, a situation like this, okay, it could be the starting point of some big change happen down the road. I'm maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of most of the news people, but I just want to call it out, and let's stay on this news and see what this will bring to China and the regime of the government there.
Yeah, remember our previous guest, Lieutenant Colonel Gurmant Larari, he shared one of the top priority for the CCP regime is internal stability. So actually, this type of policy is really affecting the internal stability in Shanghai, in China. So let's watch out what's going to happen there.
Yeah. So in the meantime, this is really showcased to all of us, right? All of us, especially in the West, how communism functions. Arbitrary decision, forceful execution, not any room to say no or resist or non-compliance. It's a ruthless regime wherever they are. The communism, that's just communism, what it is. And
imagine that how it would open door for corruptions, right? For arbitrary arrests and abuse, all kinds of things.
Okay. Yeah. Before we end today's program, I just want to use one comparison. Okay. In this country, we got this terrible energy policy, which caused the inflation to just rise high and it caused the suffering to people. People are not happy. They are not happy with the government's policy. Over there in China, okay, in order to, so-called clear zero, getting the COVID zero scenario, they issued all kinds of quarantine policy, and then people are suffering, and they don't like this public policy. We've got 2 governments who are not popular in both countries. But over here, okay, President Biden walked back because he could lose big in midterm election.
Yeah, at least he will try to, save the midterm election. And also, the other thing is people can really voice out.
Yeah, they can vote them out, right? They can vote them out. In China over here, the government, the CCP doesn't give a damn, how much suffering you're bearing with, because their power has nothing to do with common people. It's guarded by weapon, and guarded by their propaganda media. And so that's the difference, okay? So I would say treasure what we have, make the best use of it.
And also try to save.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Save it.
Yeah, save our nation, okay? Save our freedom and save this great country.
Yeah, and before we end, actually, I have an announcement, especially for people for our audience who are in California. So you probably will, be interested in this. The People's Convoy actually is coming to Sacramento next Monday. All right, so they are coming to Sacramento mainly to voice out their opposition to the Democratic California legislatures trying to push those 10 legislations. And so on next Monday, afternoon, like 1 to 3 p.m., they will have this rally in Sacramento. And the next day, they actually will be lobbying the legislatures on another bill. It's called the AB 2223 bill, which basically is legalizing the killing of baby. You may find it just outrageous, but yes, that's one of the bills. It's out of that 10 bills, okay, different from that. But this bill can just allow killing of a baby.
Born baby.
Yeah.
Not a baby in the tomb, but born baby.
So this bill will be heard at the Health Committee in California Legislature on next Tuesday's afternoon. So more, the organization, people in different organizations, they are gathering together to oppose that and trying to lobby their elected officials to oppose that bill. So just for your information, so that in case you are interested, you can, just participate or find out more information online.
Okay, yeah, and thank you again. Thank you, Larry, Hank, for your donation, and really appreciate that. And for those of you who are here, if you think our program is good, please press like and making sure you stay subscribed and have that little bell clicked. And also leaving comment also help with propaganda, triggering the algorithm so that this channel can reach more people. What?
No. Oh, Holly's asking joke. Wait.
Oh, sorry, today. How about next time? Let me take a rain check. Please take a rain check. Let me do next time.
Yeah, I think it's already over 1 hour today. So
Yeah.
It's long anyways.
Right. All right. Thank you
All
for
right.
staying with us, for your time. Really appreciate it. And all right, let's just stay informed and stay strong.
All right, take care.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
Okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.